Nightwish, one of the most influential and transformative bands in the history of heavy music. The band that not only helped define symphonic metal, but fundamentally reshape its whole scope of the genre, building a legacy that extends far beyond metal itself. In this video, I want to take you to a small town in Finland to meet Tuomas Holopainen and walk you through the story of how this initial small acoustic folk project took over the world and became not only the biggest metal band of his country, but also one of the biggest metal bands in the whole world. So sit back and welcome to the series, The Genius of, and let's talk about the almighty Nightwish. Kite, the small town in Finland in 1996, was when everything started. There, keyboardist and primary songwriter Tuomas Holopainen, and give me a break here because there's so many Finnish bands on this video and I'll try to do my best with my accent and my pronunciation, so help me out please. Tuomas had the initial idea of a modest but original concept as an acoustic project inspired by nature, solitude, and fantasy literature. He then invited classically trained soprano Tarjaturunen, who has shared the same music teacher, to provide vocals, and guitarist and schoolmate Empu Vuorinen to complete the lineup. Born on the same day as Jesus, Tuomas' first musical influence was by his mom, former music and English teacher in a small elementary school. Growing up, he played piano and later clarinet and saxophone, and he had no interest in metal until when he was studying abroad in the US. A friend from school took him to see Metallica and Guns N' Roses, and he became hooked. In his formation, he was also deeply inspired by Disney movies, The Lord of the Rings, and the Dragonlance series, influences that would later shape Nightwish's lyrical universe. Then the three musicians recorded a self-titled acoustic demo in the late 1996, and the name Nightwish was derived from this first song together. After the recording of the demo, Tuomas and the rest of the band felt a missing piece in their sound. So in the early 1997, drummer Jukka Julius Nevalainen joined the band, and the acoustic guitar was replaced by electric guitar, and then the introduction of the electric guitars and drums quickly transformed the project, mixing Tarja's operatic voice paired with distorted instrumentation and atmospheric keyboards, creating a striking contrast that would soon become the band's signature, making the birth of the sound that was largely unexplored at the time, and that sound would become symphonic metal. So in 1997, the band entered the studio to record 7 songs for the second demo titled Angels Fall First. And a month later, the demo made its way to the Finnish record label Spinefarm Records, who wanted to release it as the band's debut album. They offered Nightwish a record deal, and the band returned to the studio to record 4 more songs to complete the tracks of the demo, making Angels Fall First being released in November of '97 and being Nightwish's official debut. The only one as a 4-piece since Vuorinen recorded the bass.
When I was playing in 2 other metal bands, but I wanted to do something on my own because in those bands I didn't get the chance to make any songs. I was just like a player. So I started this own project called Nightwish, which at first was an acoustic project, making acoustic mood music without any metal elements. And that's how it all started. Our first demo was like 3 songs, this acoustic style, but we realized that Tarja's voice was so strong that the contrast between the vocals and the music was too strong. It sounded like a real weird with only acoustic guitar and then a very strong female voice. So because all the guys of the band, we had a metal background, it was an easy process to step into metal, which we already knew. So that's why our second demo was already like a gothic metal style. Actually, our second demo was called Angels Fall First, which also became our debut album.
Angels Fall First, especially right now, feels like opening an old journal. It's raw, fragile, and honestly a bit uneven, but it's sort of part of the charm too. I heard a band still figuring itself out with the folk elements and the acoustic passages standing out to me, and even though the production is a little rough, there's something magical about its innocence. It's almost like a sound of the dream just starting. So to understand Nightwish's story, let's separate this video in 4 phases. Phase 1, the first works. Tarjaturunen was born in a small village of Puhos. It was near Kite. She studied lyrical singing growing up and is a professional classical lead singer. It's a term for setting poetry to music. She's still the singer that people associate Nightwish with the most to this day, and one of the biggest reasons the band grew in popularity at first. Not only for her voice, but for her charismatic presence and looks. With Taya, the band made its live debut on December 31st of 1997, right at New Year's Eve. And shortly after that, bassist Sami Vanska joined, since Tuomas knew him from the band, oh god, Nat Vindes Grat, making the band a 5-piece for the first time, something that would stay for a long time.
I was not a metal fan, that was the thing.
Okay.
I never thought in my whole life becoming a heavy metal singer, no. But it just happened because I took the challenge like something. I felt the music was super beautiful. I felt I was capable of doing that, and since ever I've been a little child, I've been always eager to jump into challenges, and Nightwish was like that for me. It was like a, hey, let's see what's gonna happen, and whoa, things just happened and my life got changed completely.
So you have the band with the first album at the start of 1998, and they did a few shows with local bands from Finland like the Babylon Horse, Children of Bodom, and Terror. And to honor the Spine Farm Records deal, they approached studio in August of 98 to record the next album. The album was Nightwish's breakthrough called Oceanborn. Adopting a more technical and progressive sound than Angels Fall First, Oceanborn saw the band mix more the ambient and folk elements present on the first album, adding the power symphonic pieces to the mix. In contrast to the female vocals of Taya, the album also featured guest growling vocals by Tapio Wiska, being something that would become a blueprint of the band's sound in the future. Oceanborn was released in September 7 of 98 in Finland only, and it was instant success, reaching number 5 on the Finnish album charts. The album's first single, Sacrament of Wilderness, hit number 1 on the Finnish single charts, where it stayed for several weeks. The album was initially limited to Finland only, but because of its single success, Spine Farm released Oceanborn internationally in the spring of 1999, and that stretch made Oceanborn sell more than 68,000 copies in Finland, and it finally made to America by Century Media in March of 2001, something that definitely helped elevate the popularity of the band. So this album, along with Therion's Telly, it was the two albums that came to be known as two of the cornerstones of the emerging genre of symphonic metal. There is other examples, but I think those two are the most important ones. With Oceanborn, that's where I feel that Nightwish truly became Nightwish. The speed, the neoclassical keyboards, the icy atmosphere, its sharp and confident songwriting, Taya's vocals soar in a way that feels almost untouchable. And then when I listen to the album, I hear ambition exploding in every direction. Following up the band's first international success, Nightwish was added as the opening band for the German heavy metal outfit Rage in their 1999 European tour. Later, both the albums and the singles Sacrament of the Wilderness and Walking in the Air were certified gold in Finland in 1999. While in studio in early 2000 working on the third album, Nightwish was accepted in the Finnish Eurovision Song Contest pre-selection final with the song Sleepwalker. But despite of winning the public vote, they eventually finished in third place. Just a curiosity at that time. But obviously with more experience under the belt, the writing and recording of Wishmaster, the third album, was very fast and devoid of complications. That's what we thought, apparently. Because later we learned that, according to Tuomas, it was the most distant and the least personal album he ever wrote. On May of 2000, Nightwish released their third studio album, Wishmaster. Still under Spine Farm Records, it debuted and spent 3 weeks at number 1 in the Finnish album charts, selling enough records to be certified gold in Finland. With that, Nightwish embarked on the first world tour, playing dates in South America, Mexico, and Canada. In the summer, the band returned to Europe in the first headlining European tour with Synergy and Eternal Tears of Sorrow, and appear at Wacken for the first time. Wishmaster's sound continues with the bombastic symphonic power metal approach, with more emphasis on atmosphere and melody instead of speed and heaviness. It's heavily inspired by fantasy, especially Lord of the Rings and Dragonlance, and Disney animated movies, like we previously mentioned before, especially the fantasy and fable elements, like the song Phantasmic. For me, Wishmaster is the ultimate fantasy era album. It's fast, dramatic, and epic. The power metal energy is at full throttle, and I love how over the top it is. I love the title song, Kingslayer, and Wanderlust, especially.
Rehellisiä olla, niin kyllä se niinku toiveessa kävi, että jos se jossain vaiheessa edes yhden viikon olisi ykkösenä, niin olisi se tosi hieno.
Jos mä arvostelisin levyä, mä voisin väittää, että tämä on aika eteerinen omalla tavallaan. Oletteko te löytänyt jotain uusia herkkyyksiä kenties nyt itsestänne tai bändistä, joka heijastuu tälle levylle?
Laulajasta voi sanoa varmaan löydetty mun äänestä. Siitä on kyllä löydetty tosi paljon ja Tuomas, niin kuin mitä mä oon nyt huomannut ainakin näiden vuosien aikana, niin kehitystä on tullut siinäkin suunnassa tosi paljon, että on, tällä levyllä nyt keskityttiin minun vokaalisiin linjoihin täysin todellakin paljon enemmän kuin ennen. Ja se on kyllä kuultavissa levyltä, että siellä on tosi monipuolista äänenkäyttöä nyt käytetty, että se on ollut ihan mielenkiintoinen prosessi kaiken.
Onhan tokaakin puoli siis niin kuin paljon tunnelmallisempi levy ylipäänsä. Oceanborn on minusta vähän turhan sellainen tekninen ja turhan sellainen mahtipontinen kunnianhimoinen, joka on sinänsä hyvä asia. Toi on kyllä siis todella sellainen tunteikas. Sitä siihen haettiin ja onnistui erittäin.
Phase 2, World Domination. So, before we go to the next album, we have to talk about the band facing the first of many internal issues that would become a trademark of the band's career. Soon after the release of the EP Over the Hills and Far Away, Nightwish met what has been described as one of the hardest points of their career. At that time, yeah. You call it whatever you want, early success or difficulties on the road, whatever many challenges young, successful bands face. But the reality is that it was such a hard moment that Tuomas unofficially declared that Nightwish was over. There were many things, but apparently the main issue was with Sammy, who had started misbehaving towards the band, missing appointments and failing to take concerts as seriously as the other members. To continue with Nightwish, Tuomas decided to make some changes, asking Vanska to leave and replacing him with Marko Hietala, a bass player of the band Terror. In addition of Marko plays such an important part of the band's history because in addition of the playing bass guitar, Marko also would perform the now famous male vocals that contrast so much with Taya at the time and the other singers in the future. Another important piece of the band that would help the tremendous success they would achieve in the next two albums.
Like you said, we met in 2000 when we were doing this tour together. I was playing in Synergy. And at that time, I kind of recognized how big the band had become. I knew the reputation from Finland and all that, but I didn't really expect what kind of a thing it would be to be touring with them at that time. And I saw how much like the things had grown to be really pro and all that. A little bit after a year after that, Ivo calls me, would you come over to my place? Tuomas is here and we'd like to talk about you coming to play the bass within the band. Okay. So I was living about 100 meters from the place and said, okay, I'll finish my coffee and my cigarette and I'll come over. And we talked about that. He told me about the plans for the male vocals and all that, and sounded really interesting to me. So I said, okay, I will try to do it. And we set up some timetables for rehearsals and all that. And I think the first thing that we did was that when I came by to the train station, the guys were there to pick me up. The first thing that we did, we went to a local gas station and bought some plastic bags of beer and went to the rehearsing room. And from there on, the chemistry worked quite fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
As for my part, what I try to bring to the sound, I mean, I'm 1/5 of the band and everybody's responsible in one way or another of the overall sound. But of course, I do try to, when we go heavy, I do try to bring in the actual, kind of a real heaviness with the sound and how I play, and also this kind of a 70s groove into the rhythm bottom, which I find that is missing in quite a lot of these Pro Tools produced stuff these days. And I'm a big fan of bands like AC/DC and all that, where they have really a groovy rhythm button and all that, and to incorporate that into this kind of a symphonic mix-up metal, whatever it is a challenge that I'm very much willing to take and want to keep on doing it.
In 2002, Nightwish released the album Century Child. The album was boosted by the singles Ever Dream and Bless the Child, and was certified gold 2 hours after its release, and platinum 2 weeks afterwards. The release of Century Child marked a significant emotional and stylistic shift, since while fantasy elements remained, the album introduced darker, more personal themes, plus the additional of the Marco Hietala, like we say, adding a new dynamic and even more distinctive sound for the band, blended his recognizable grounded voice and mixed with Tarja's operatic presence. This era demonstrated Nightwish's growing maturity as songwriters and performers, grasping now the full symphonic, operatic, heavy metal, grandioso approach, and also for the first time using a live orchestra on the tracks Bless the Child, Ever Dream, Feel For You, and The Beauty of the Beast in studio. The album also has the first song that I can say that broke the bubble with the fan favorite version of the Phantom of the Opera from the famous musical of the same name. Well, at least it was the first time I listened to Nightwish. Following the success of Century Child in 2003, the band also released the second DVD, the documentary End of Innocence, and it felt that everything seemed to move in the common direction. But however, as the band's success grew, interpersonal tensions, especially between Tuomas and Tarja, began to surface. Vocalists got married during the summer of 2003, and that was something that would play a part on her dismissal from the band in 2005. But before that was time to release their masterpiece. Once is the fifth album of the band, released in June 7 of 2004, along with his first single, Nemo. The release of Once aligned with the time that the popularity of bands like Evanescence had peaked international and especially America, had a growing interest in symphonic goth metals like Lacuna Coil and Within Temptation. That aligned with the obvious monstrosity quality of the album that, by the way, utilizes the full London Philharmonic Orchestra in the 9 of the 11 songs and costs approximately 250,000 euros to make, making Finland's most expensive record in history at the time. Made Once sell triple platinum in Finland, platinum in Germany, and gold in 6 other countries. It also reached #1 in Greece, Norway, and Germany album charts. The single Nemo, with its distinctive piano intro, topped the charts in Finland and Hungary and reached the charts in 6 additional countries. Once was not only well received by the public, but also by the critics. And here I cannot stress enough how gigantic was the impact of Once in the whole metal community at the time. Argonaut of that being the best Nightwish album, and there was a lot of debate and a lot of room for that. It was and still is the most important work they ever put out. From the bombastic intro, Dark Chest of Wonders, from the first demonstration of power between Tarja and Marco on Wish I Had an Angel, Planet Hell, The Epic Ghost, Love Score, and the underrated The Siren. This album is perfect from start to finish, a true masterpiece and the most important album in symphonic metal history, selling 2.3 million copies worldwide and becoming not only the most important album, but also the most successful album of the band to date. The success of the album allowed them to perform their Once Upon a Tour, in which the band played in many countries they never had played before. And it also made them perform at the opening ceremony of the 2005 World Championships in Athletics held in Helsinki, highlighting the acclaim the band had gained. The final concert of the two was played on October 21st for 11,500 people in Hartwall Arena in Helsinki. The concert was also recorded to be released as the End of an Era live DVD and CD that was released a year after in June. Now, if you want to watch a concert of a band on the top of the game, I mean, on the top of the game, please go watch the End of the Era DVD, show, whatever. It's on YouTube. It's the best Nightwish concert ever recorded and probably one of the best metal concerts like ever. Everything about this concert is nostalgic and memorable. From the set list to Tarja's yellow dress on Phantom of the Opera to the public interaction, everything. What a moment in music history.
How do you look back on the album music-wise?
I'm still really proud of it. I mean, I wouldn't change a note still. That was the band at its best in 2004. And when we got it done, we were really happy with it. We're still really happy with it. The tour following that, especially the year 2004, was a lot of fun. I think it was the best time the band had ever had until that moment. So I look at
look back at those times with just positive thoughts.
But, you know, and I know you're waiting for that but. Despite the album's success, internal conflicts reached to a breaking point. In October of 2005, Tarja was dismissed from the band through a public open letter released shortly after the concert in Finland. And the main justification being that the band felt that her husband, Marcello Cabulli, and her own commercial interests had changed her attitude towards the band. Tarja responded saying that the dismissal came as a shock to her, that she had not been notified of anything. She felt that the personal attacks on her husband were far away from fair, and that playing the issue out in public was senselessly cruel. The decision sparked widespread controversy, legal disputes, and intense fan division, and the departure of Tarja marked the end of Nightwish's original era and raised serious doubts about the band's future. If you're around that time, it still is one of the big drama soap opera history in metal. To this day, people still talk about this.
Toki sitä, että millä tavalla tämä ratkaisu tehtiin, niin mä olisin henkilökohtaisesti tässä toiminut hyvin toisella tavalla. Ja siitä mä oon tosi surullinen ja tosi surullinen, että he eivät pystyneet sitä mulle. Että he eivät pystyneet sitä mulle henkilökohtaisesti kertomaan. Kaiken tämän 9 vuoden hienon musiikkikokemuksen jälkeen. Koska mä olin siihen itsekin valmistautunut siihen, että mä en jatka Nightwishissä enää seuraavan levyn jälkeen. Mä olin valmistautunut siihen ja olin valmistautunut myös siihen, että tulen kertomaan siitä ihmisille julkisesti, mutta ihan toisella tavalla kuin mitä tässä tapauksessa toimii.
Do you have any regrets then maybe about the open letter to Tarja, or was it?
I don't have any regrets, no. I mean, and I also understand that people, as outsiders, they see it their own way. They see it in a really cruel way and all that. There are so many details involved in everything that happened, in everything why we acted in a way that we did, that people don't know about. And it's actually none of their business either, so everything that ever happened was like a democratic decision. I have just like been the spokesman or the messenger for the band. So the only thing that I kind of regret is that the focus has been maybe a bit too much just to myself, because I mean the letter and the decision, everything was done by the 4 guys in the band. But since I'm kind of like the main character in the band, I ended up being the spokesman.
Part 3. Reinvention. To find a replace for Tarja in 2006, the band allowed interest vocalists to send in demo tapes as an audition for the spot, and in the end, after sending a demo tape of the song Everdream, 35-year-old Allison Avenue's ex-lead singer Annette Ingegerd Olsson from Sweden was chosen. In September of 2006, the band entered the studio to record the 6th studio album, Dark Passion Play, but Annette Olsson was officially announced as the new vocalist only in May of 2007. Dark Passion Play was released around Europe in the last week of September of 2007, in the UK on 1st of October, and the United States on October 2nd. It was awarded double platinum in Finland the second day after its release, and it took the #1 positions on the charts of Germany, Finland, Switzerland, Hungary, and Croatia, and got in the top 100 in other 16 countries, including the United States. Pre-orders of Dark Passion Play had certified gold in Finland before it had even been released, and it sold almost 2 million copies since its release. The record also broke the band's previous record for Finland's most expensive audio recording, with the final production cost coming at almost 500,000 euros. It was almost twice the cost of once. The album starts with a 14-minute suite about the backlash Tuomas had to suffer after firing Tarja, the poet, and the pendulum. And Annette has definitely a different approach from Tarja. He sings in a normal tone, and the songs are in a way simpler than the previous ones, but still very powerful and even with a greater use of the orchestra. It brings inspiration from Finnish and Irish culture, which can be clearly heard on the song Last of the Wilds, and songs like Master Passion Greed and Cadence of Her Last Breath, including thrash metal approach and alternative metal elements as well, displaying the newer, more modern sound of the band. I also love the song Bye Bye Beautiful, and apparently Amaranth is the most popular Nightwish song on Spotify, which I had no idea, and I just find this out. But obviously, Dark Passion Play was a divided album since some fans didn't approve the change of the singer and the new more pop side of Nightwish, which I completely disagree on that part, but I can definitely see people taking Tyre's side or not being very happy with the new singer. It's just not because of her, it's just because that's how people are. To me, the album does justice, and I've seen people saying it is their favorite Nightwish album. I heard that. Anne was never the best live singer, but you can clearly see that artistically, all the other members were at the peak. The compositions on Dark Passion Play are among one of the best of the whole discography, and it's also where Marco Hietala shines almost as big as the lead vocalist. He carries the band forward in various moments, to be honest, and with all of that, culminates on the next album, which is, for me, my favorite Nightwish album. Imaginarium for me is Nightwish's most daring artistic statement. It was conceived as a multimedia concept leading metal with orchestral music, film scoring, and theatrical elements. According to Tuomas, the album is a concept album that tells the story of an old composer who is reminiscent of his youth on his deathbed, citing three major influences being the film director Tim Burton, author Neil Gaiman, and the painter Salvador Dali. There's an interesting fact about Imaginarium was that it was produced alongside a film of the same name, directed by Stone Harju, who previously directed Nightwish's The Islander music video that shares the same theme and general story of the album. The film was released in 2012, and it is a weird but beautiful piece of art. Definitely not for everyone, and I recommend you check out. It's on YouTube and it's kind of short. It's an hour and 20 minutes. I'll say it's definitely not for me, but I appreciate what they done. It was also the last album with Jukka that left the band doing his endless battle with insomnia.
Joo, olen kärsinyt unettomuudesta jo vuosien ajan ja se on ollut seurana jo aikaisemmilla kiertueilla. Ja kyseessä ei ole mikään kyseisen vaivan kevyin muoto, vaan puhutaan siis täydellisestä unettomuudesta, jonka kanssa toimeen tuleminen on aika haasteellista ja ihan normaali olosuhteessa, saati sitten sen verran epäsäännöllisessä hommassa kuin kiertoilla pyöriminen. Meillä on nyt oltu treenaamassa tulevaa Nightwish-levyä kuukauden päivät suurin piirtein. Ja valitettavasti kyseinen vaiva on ollut seurana myös täällä. Ja tästä johtuen on nyt joutunut tekemään henkilökohtaisen päätöksen, että astun sivuun tulevalta Nightwish-levyltä ja tulevalta kiertueelta. Tämä on nyt valitettava tilanne, mutta ainoa oikea päätös tässä vaiheessa.
The Imaginary War Tour had dates in North, Central and South America, Australia and Europe, but during the US tour in Denver, Anna fell ill, and one of the shows had the band call in Elise Reed and Alyssa Whiteglass to help perform that show. And that's incredible. Kudos for them because they learned the whole set list in less than a day or 2-3 hours. Watch this, it's incredible.
Annette has been rushed to hospital, vomiting, extreme pain, terrible fever, and the worst scenario has been suggested to us. I'm sure you all understand what that means. However, we have came up with an alternative, and it's this. The idea is that we do the show. We invite Elise from Camelot to come and sing the songs that she knows. Oh, that's nice to hear. She comes up and does that. The rest of us do the best we can with you helping us by singing along to some of the songs.
Elise and I just got off stage, and then we heard that their singer Annette was really sick, and unfortunately she had to go to the hospital. So we had like 5-10 minutes to prepare, and then we just went on stage and did our best to entertain the crowd, and the crowd gave us their blessing, so that was cool.
Hello. Hello. How are you doing today?
Hi, nice to see you.
What about, is there any chance with lyrics you could do story time?
Wait, story time. Can you if you play it for me?
It was the night before.
When all through the world.
Kauhea häslinkoihan siinä oli. Osa niinku downloadailee niitä tekstejä, toiset printtailee ja
A couple days later, the singer was let go from the band, with Dutch singer Floor Jansen, that previously sang on After Forever and Revamp, being called to finish the tour in her place. Annette expressed her disappointment, saying that she was never asked if it was okay to use Elise and Elisa in the show. She later announced on her official blog that she was pregnant with her third child, which she claimed was a contributing factor of her being dismissed. The band then released a statement on their website counter-claiming that the reason Annette gave her dismissal and other statements she made were untrue, and that she had agreed to help find a replacement while she was on maternity leave. Later, Annette gave several interviews in which she said she never agreed with the replacement, even when she was pregnant, and proposed to the band to postpone the tour, which culminated in her firing. Wow, more drama, I know. I felt that her dismissal was definitely less professional and weirder than Taya. They should have learned the lesson with her, and at the time they handled really poorly, and to this day, there's still something not clicking with Annette and the rest of the band, but you know, more drama, they moved on.
There are many good times that I've had with Nightwish.
Are you still in contact with the guys, or?
No, we haven't spoken since the last gig. Yeah.
Would you like to be in touch with them, or?
Well, I think at some point we should sit down if they feel like me, because I don't like to have unsolved issues. I think it's better to sit down and just, hey, thank you, and you know. But if that happens, it's up to them actually, because I'm open for everything. I don't hold grudges. I think it's better to move on. So let's see if we end up meeting in a backstage somewhere. No, but I hope we will meet one day. I mean, there are things that I think you always have to say thank you and goodbye and keep a good vibe. It's always not nice to have bad feelings between people.
From that tour, it's also important to mention the release of Showtime Storytime Live at Wacken in 2013, with Floor already on the vocals. And you see that show, you feel like Floor is being on the band for ages, but it was just the second part of the tour. So she's been in the band for the last, 3 to 6 months. So it's incredible to see how good they sound live and how much she fits on Nightwish. She was born to sing with the band, basically. And then remember when I say the End of the Era was the best Nightwish concert ever? So yeah, I changed my mind. I like this one better, and it's just one of the greatest live albums of all time. Floor, it's absolutely stunning on this album. It's incredible. The whole band, everything, incredible. Part 4, the Floor Jansen era. Floor Elisabeth Maria Dahlen was born on February 21st in 1981 in the Netherlands, the city of Corley, North Brabant. She was only 16 when she joined Apocalypse, later known as After Forever, in 1997, and recorded 5 studio albums with the band. She later performed with the progressive metal band Revamp before joining Nightwish.
About a year ago, I got a phone call. Can you come to the States and sing with Nightwish now?
Were you like somebody's kidding, or?
They didn't sound like they were kidding. There was a slight panic, and that's how it all started. I indeed just went there and stepped in and kept touring with them ever since. And it went really, really nicely from the beginning, both musically as personally. And somewhere this summer, they asked both me as the uilleann pipe and flute player Troy Donackley to join the band. And that was a no-brainer for me.
So you immediately said yes.
Yeah.
The arrival of Floor marked a period of renewed stability and artistic cohesion. Floor's vocal versatility, from spanning operatical, rock, folk, and metal styles, allowed Nightwish to integrate their diverse musical identities more seamlessly than ever before. It's a feeling that Floor can bring the best of Taya and Annette into one. The first album with Floor, Endless Forms Most Beautiful, in 2015, signaled a thematic transformation, shifting focus from fantasy to science, evolution, and humanity's place in the natural world. It also marked the announcement of the multi-instrumentalist Troy Doneclay as a full-time member, which he has been playing with McCartney with the band since Dark Passion Play, so it was not too much of a change over there. And additional of the ex-Swallow the Sun and Winter Sun drummer Kai Hato make the band a six-piece for the first time. The album was released in March 27, 2015, and the title for Endless Forms Most Beautiful was taken from the writings of English naturalist Charles Darwin. And Professor Richard Dawkins not only narrates the introduction of the album opener, Shudders Before the Beautiful, but also the album's closer, The Greatest Show on Earth, which is a beast of a song, which takes its name from his 2009 book on evolution. When I heard the album for the first time, I felt a new sense of power and versatility. Shifting the themes of the album from fantasy into science and evolution, I find it fascinating. The album feels expansive and thoughtful. It's less about speed and more about atmosphere and grandeur. To promote the album's release, the band went on the Endless Forms Most Beautiful World Tour. And apart from a few chaotic changes in the lineup that have been happening in the past 10 years, they played at the 2015 edition of Rock in Rio and became the first Finnish band to headline a show, which was sold out, by the way, at Wembley. That show was filmed on another live album release known as Vehicle of Spirit, which is not as good as Vacuum, just because. A curiosity about the album is that 5 years after the album's release, 2 discoveries have been named in honor of the album. A new crab species called the Tanidromedes nightshirushorum and a prehistoric rock shelter called the Alpenglow Rock Shelter was also named for the honor of the album's 9th track, Alpenglow. In 2021, it was elected by Metal Hammer as the 3rd best symphonic metal album of all time, which I completely disagree with, but okay, I like the effort though. It was only 5 years later that Nightwish released its second album with The Floor and the 9th of their career. Human Nature, it is the band's first double album with the second CD complete with the orchestral music named All the Works of Nature with Adorn the World, split in 8 parts. The album features a wide vocal collaboration between Marco, Troy, and Floor, which brings even deeper elements of folk music. The album was released on April 10 of 2020, and it was right when COVID started, and oh boy, I listened to this album so much because of that. So much. It debuted at top 10 charts as #1 in Finland, Spain, Switzerland, and Germany, and as well being charted in other countries including Canada, Austria, Hungary, Poland, and the United States. Human Nature is a bold and conceptual album. I really admire the decision to include the entire orchestral disc. I personally don't listen to that part as much, and I didn't really care when it came out, but it shows confident and artistic maturity. The themes of humanity and nature feel reflective and philosophical. It's not the heaviest record, but it is deeply immersive.
I think Human Nature is a very logical sequel to the previous album. Actually, if you take the previous album and attach the beginning of this album to the ending of that, it goes beautifully from The Greatest on Earth to music. So thematically, we're sailing in the same waters. The first 9 songs of the album being the human part of the album, and then the last song being the nature part. The first 9 songs is all about stories about humanity, human beings, human nature, sang by a human voice, or 3. And after that, you put on the second disc and go to nature and relax for 30 minutes with an instrumental orchestral piece.
Unfortunately, On January of 2021, Marco Hietala announced his departure from the band, citing struggles with chronic depression and his disillusionment with the music scene in general. The band released another statement that a temporary member would fill on bass for the tour, and I mean, I felt that the band handled his dismissal way better at the time. If even was his dismissal, I think it was more his decision than the band anyways.
I'd been thinking about it for a while. I had a lot of weight, and I tend to, well, with the attention disorder, it tells me that when there are lots of trouble, then the disorder makes it into a real, chaos.
Yeah. When you are overthinking.
Yeah, there's a shitload of stuff coming and going and no peace anywhere. And I was, for a year or two, I was already like waking up every night at 3 o'clock to bad dreams and anxiety. And so I'd say that the whole process probably started already with my former divorce. That was a very sad time when you think about your kids and your broken homes and all that. And then when I started to get clear from that, then there were, well, all kinds of things.
So yeah, take a deep breath. After all of this, Yesterwind is the 10th and final studio album released on September 20th of 2024 by Nuclear Blast, which I forgot to mention that they have been Nightwish's record label since 2015. It's an album that follows its continuation on their more mature orchestral direction. And here I just heard a band that's fully comfortable in its identity. The songwriting feels layered and cinematic, less focused on power metal speed and more on emotional storytelling from a band that after all their journey knows exactly who they are, what they want, and are comfortable enough to explore any direction. I still need more time to observe this album like the other ones. I did not listen as much when it came out, but what I can say is that I love Perfume of the Timeless and Sway.
It's a thematic album about time, memories, and evanescence about the mortality of human life. And without going too deep into the themes, because I want listeners to discover the stories themselves and build their own stories around those stories. That's vital. But if there is one message that I would like people to find from this album is that be grateful that you are in existence and make the very best out of the few decades you have in the sun.
The themes in it, apart from the fact that it's connected, as in like a red thread connection to human nature and Endless Form's Most Beautiful, is that despite the negativity of the pandemic, it is a very positive album, a positive view on mankind. So not just the nature, the natural part, but definitely as we are as a species, to not forget that we're actually, despite pandemics and wars and the terrors of this world, we're thriving, we're doing better than ever. And that is celebrated in this album, to not forget that part and to also take a peek back into history where it's clear that we are just in the latest second of our evolution. We have been there for a while. I think it brings a healthy perspective, a little distance of where we are at this point of our lives. And that is extremely welcome in times where you focus so much on the thing that happens in your life.
There was no touring cycle in support of the album, as the band had issued a statement that they would be going on hiatus from touring for 2 or 3 years following the album's release, but plans are for the band to perform some shows in 2027 for the band's 30th anniversary, which is technically 2026, but maybe 30th anniversary of the first release. I don't know, but hopefully they are back soon, because that's a band that I never seen live. So why Nightwish fundamentally created and reshaped symphonic metal? We can find many answers to this story, but ultimately they did it by proving that orchestral arrangements could coexist in a heavy instrumentation without compromising its intensity, and demonstrating that metal could address fantasy, trauma, science, and philosophy with equal legitimacy. In the early years, soprano style operatic vocals were the defining feature of the band's identity and helped shape their signature sound. Although operatic singing became less prominent on her departure in 2005, the band occasionally revisited that, particularly with Floor. While centered around a female lead singer, the band has consistently included male vocals since their debut album, which reached its most important moment when Marco was that voice. Their dramatic scope, stylistic evolution, and fusion of metal with symphonic and occasional folk influences of Nightwish's sound, blending with its distinctive female lead voice and an antagonist male vocal, became so unique and powerful that influenced many bands throughout the years. Just a few examples like Epca, After Forever, and Sonata Arctica. Many others acknowledging Nightwish's impact on their creation and career. When I look at Nightwish's journey, what strikes me the most isn't just the albums, the lineup changes, or even the sale numbers, is that from a small acoustic demo recorded in Kite to perform with full orchestras, headlining Wembley, surviving some of the most public and painful lineup changes in metal history, they definitely never choose the safe route. They always chose evolution, risk, and vision, with every era representing something different. With Taya, they built the myth, the big operatic fantasy world that defined early symphonic metal. With Annette, they embraced more cinematic storytelling, and with Flora, they found balance and versatility, power, and more artistic freedom. And through all of it, the brain behind everything is still Tuomas Holopainen, constantly searching for meaning, whether through fantasy worlds, personal pain, or the poetry of science and nature. Albums like Once felt epic and larger than life, Imaginary felt like stepping into a dream, Endless Forms Most Beautiful made me reflect on humanity's place in the universe. And honestly, very few bands can say they have done all of that. I truly mean it. What makes Nightwish truly special isn't that they just helped defining symphonic metal, that was just the first thing, but there's so many transformation and redefining the sound and band throughout their career. If Nightwish ever gave you goosebumps, even once, then you're part of something bigger than just a band. We are definitely part of history, and I feel like we're very lucky to be living in the same world that Nightwish exists. That's the part of the genius, I guess.
One thing that I've learned in the past years is never to promise anything.
Okay.
Because I remember saying that if there's one more band member change in the band, that's it. And then Margo dropped the bomb a couple of years ago, and I really thought that was it, but here we still are.
Yeah.
So just go a year or two, album or two albums at the time. I still get the same vibes as I did 27 years ago when I wrote the first Nightwish songs. I still get that same feeling when I finish writing a new song and realize that this is gonna be something special. Or even if you get one part finished, like the perfect chorus, at least in my own head, the adrenaline rush that comes at that specific moment it's the best thing in the world. And I'm just so happy, and I feel privileged that it's still there inside.
Thank you so much for watching this video that comes from a fan to another fan. I loved getting into the whole discography of the band again. So many songs and albums that I haven't listened in such a long time. Getting deeper into Tuomas' brain and understanding more Taya's, Anne, and Flora's way to approach music and the rest of the band. I hope you like this video as you like the band, and I hope you help me support this channel by subscribing, sharing, commenting, and helping spread the word. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.